Well, welcome to Echoes of Swing. My name is April DeShields. We're sitting here today with Rossano Sportiello, who's looking just very snappy as always. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Nice. This is the same room that you're usually in for your YouTube videos, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. Where is this?
This is my apartment in Greenwich Village, New York.
Uh-huh. Perfect. I love the little sculptures on top of the piano.
A little bit of artwork that my wife said that it would look good on the piano, because
Well, she's right.
otherwise, the white walls might be too empty.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's very correct on that. Well, again, we've mentioned the YouTube videos. What made you start doing those? Because personally, I love them very much, and they always make my week a better place to be. So what gave you the idea to do that?
Well, when the pandemic hit, our profession, self-employed musician, came to a complete stop.
Right.
And so after, I would say, 3-4 weeks of break, I decided that I needed to find an alternative way to keep in touch with my audience.
Yeah.
So first I started by publishing about one short video, just one tune a day, one or two tunes a day. If I felt inspired to play more, I would record maybe 2 clips and so on. And then, last October, actually October 4th, 2020, so
Right.
a little bit more than a year ago, I decided to start live streaming. And I came up with this obvious title, Live at the Flat in Greenwich Village.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the subtitle was because that's where we are.
Right, exactly. So you didn't have to reach too hard on that.
That's right. And so I didn't have much hopes, because I didn't know really how to live stream. I started just using the laptop, with the laptop camera, everything. So kind of not very good. But apparently people, in spite of that, enjoyed the piano playing. And so I kept going. I improved with a good microphone, a better camera, and here I am after 54 concerts made, and still intending to keep going.
Good. I hope so, because it makes my Tuesdays better. Generally, you try to do that Tuesdays, right?
Yeah, I started on Sundays, and then in last June I switched to Tuesdays, because I thought that with the vaccinations and the pandemic seemed to be getting better, and so people probably on Sundays started to go out. So I thought maybe a weekday would be better, and so since then I've been doing it on Tuesday, with very few exceptions.
Yeah. Well, I think the first time that I had ever heard your name, actually, I know it was the first time I ever heard your name. Dan Barrett and Alan Vichet were staying with us in Santa Cruz. I think it was between the San Diego and Monterey festivals, which I ran the Monterey Festival at the time as far as booking the bands and things. And Dan was kind of poking around on the piano, just hanging out, and he started talking to Alan and I about you. He had just come back from someplace or another. I honestly don't remember where he said, but he was just raving on. And through the entire week, probably every day, several times a day, we had to hear about Rossano. And I finally turned to Dan once at dinner and I went, "Are you getting agent's commission on this?" He goes, "I love the guy." And I'm like, "No way, I couldn't tell."
Yeah, well, he deserves really lots of credit, because he started to believe in me way before many others.
Yeah.
And so that means a lot, especially from a well-established musician like he is, So I'll be grateful to him for that forever, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Well, he's a good friend, but once he's really on this to something musically, whether it's a musician or something, he, as you already know, knowing him for so long, he has to talk about it frequently, and that's one of the reasons why I got to know him so well, is because we both loved a lot of the same music when I was a kid growing up. But I'm so glad that you are now in the States, and generally speaking, of course, you still go back to Italy and all over Europe. In fact, you said that you're going to be going out there soon. What sorts of things will you be up to on this visit out to Italy?
Well, I'm going to visit my parents, and
Oh,
then
okay.
I'll take a little trip to Switzerland, to Germany, and then back to Italy, and altogether about 10 days, and then back to New York.
Good, good. I will make sure to make note of the YouTube channel in the description so that folks can go straight to it. But I know that you make all the content free, which is
That's
wonderful.
right.
But there's also your website, which I'll also put a link to, a lot of recordings. And you had a nice story about a recording with a very dear friend of mine that was of yours as well, Jim Galloway. So tell me about how that one came about, because I just thought that was interesting.
You know, Jim Galloway, actually, once again, I met him because of Dan Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was playing with Dan in Switzerland at the Ascona Jazz Festival on the Italian part of Switzerland, on the Lake Maggiore. And Jim Galloway was also one of the uh, star guests, guest stars, how do you say in English?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
of the festival. And, you know, I was playing with in Dan's band, Dan Barrett's
Yeah.
seven-piece band, and Jim was one night was our guest,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was very kind to me right away. And at the end of the night, he asked me for my email address and my, you
Yeah.
know, details. And then a few years went by. I moved to the United States, and at a certain point, out of the blue, I get a call from Jim that he wants me to go play to Canada.
Uh-huh.
So then we became friends, and then through Jim, I think it was through Jim that I got to know also John Norris, that was a
Oh yeah.
record producer in Canada. And so, and I just loved those two guys over there. You know, they showed me so much, uh, how can I say, sincere respect to the
Yeah.
way I played. You know,
Yeah.
it meant so much, you know,
Yeah.
so much. And, you know, these were people, you know, like Jim and John Norris and Dan Barrett himself, that to them what mattered was always just the music and the beauty
Mm-hmm.
of the music.
Mm-hmm.
All the business, money, and all that was just some kind of, you know, not essential
Yeah.
problem.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I always admired musicians and music fans that worked that way,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
The money was never the first concern,
Right.
you know. So it's something to think about, you know, especially when we deal very often with the promoters where the money is the first issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Especially with that.
believe me, no one of us playing this music the way we want it, how we want it. Of course, no one is becoming rich.
Yeah. Especially if they wanted to be rich, they wouldn't choose this business. You're absolutely right about that.
No, I know it's, but we get some nice degrees of freedom,
Yes,
and
that's
that
true.
has got no price.
Yeah. But then the recording that you've got with Jim was at his house, you said?
Yeah, so Jim at a certain point decided that we should do a duet recording, and he arranged a recording engineer with all the machinery at his wife place, Ann Page. Ann Page Galloway, that still is a very, very dear friend of mine. Great lady, just
Yes,
wonderful.
she is. Yeah.
And and so we met one evening after dinner, and we just started playing tunes one after the other, and sipping a little wine, and then playing, and then listening back to. And then, you know, at the end of the evening, we had something like more than an hour of music recorded.
Yeah.
But then, you know, months went by, I think a couple of years went by, and then Jim got sick, and then he passed away, and we all forgot about the recording that never became a record until a couple of years, no, maybe 3 years ago, uh, and found the masters,
Oh,
and
okay.
just by coincidence, and she said, "What is this?" She put it on the CD player, and she found out what it was, and she called me right away and said, "You know, maybe we should put it out." So she sent me a copy, and I listened through, and I by then I forgot all about it. I
Yeah.
mean, what we played, how we played,
Right. Yeah.
and was very, very enjoyable. So I told them, just go ahead and do what you want with it, and
Good.
a nice CD came out.
Yeah. I'm glad too, because well, I mean, I've always loved his playing. It's just he has such a nice mixture of Hodges and Bechet in there, but it's all
That's
him to where you can know
that's
it's
right.
him, you know, anytime he plays. I just love it.
Jim used to smoke some
Those
cigarettes.
cloves. Yeah.
It was not tobacco, it was
No, it
something
was the
else.
clove cigarette. It was like a Turkish or Egyptian thing.
That's
Yeah.
right. And you could smell those cigarettes miles away.
Yes, you
So I
could.
remember one time we were at a jazz party in England playing, and we get to the venue, and I was with Jake Hanna, the great
Yeah.
drummer,
Yeah.
and way far. So we smelled that stuff, and Jake said, "Oh, Jim Galloway's around."
Uh-huh.
Believe it or not, as soon as we got there, you know, behind the stage there was Jim.
Yep. Yeah, Jake once said we were, I don't remember, it was probably LA or someplace, and somebody lit up a cigarette, and it was, of course, California, so no smoking anywhere. And so Jake goes, "Hey, get Galloway over here. It'll erase the cigarette smell. Everybody will think we just had a big ham in here."
That's right.
actually no one in your family had played an instrument. So what really drew you into going to conservatory at such a young age? It kind of drove your love for it.
It's, in my life, my musical career, if you try to trace it back step by step, everything happened by chance.
Yeah.
Everything. There was no planning. Everything happened by chance. So I became attracted to the piano, and I started asking about piano lessons. And we moved back in 1980 in another neighborhood of my hometown that is called Vigevano in the province of Pavia, northern Italy. And right next door, there was a piano teacher.
Oh, okay.
There, a lady piano teacher. So I told my mother that I wanted to take piano lessons. So I took about 3 months this was a few years later. So this was, I believe, in 1982. Yes, few months with this lady. And then, you see, back then, they would make you study solfege and music theory way before touching the piano. So after a few months, I got tired of that. I really wanted to play the piano. And so we heard that there was a music school in my hometown that functioned just as a conservatory. And so we filed the application to enter the school. But of course, back then, every child wanted to play the instrument, except, and especially the piano. So there were only 10 seats available with many applicants. So of course, I was right away discarded. And then again, by chance, after a few weeks, they reached out to me because another child that was selected actually dropped out shortly after the very first few lessons.
Right.
And so that's how it started. I found a great teacher. I studied with this teacher, Mr. Carlo Villa, for all the way until the final degree in classical music at the age of 22 with the same teacher.
Wow.
He was a very smart man. I think when you want to learn to do something, you got to find a teacher that resonates with you to a point that you like that person so much that is not only the music, but you want to emulate the old person.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt with that teacher, It became like a second father, I would say.
Yeah.
And then that was that. But soon after just the first few years, I found out about jazz and felt very attracted by this music, especially the early forms of jazz.
Right.
And I started to experiment. And we couldn't find, back then, there was no internet, so you wouldn't find no books. There was no jazz school. So I probably was one of the last generations to learn to play jazz, as Barry Harris says, on the street.
Yeah.
Just grab what you can by ear and keep trying at the piano, and then meet people, maybe other musicians that know better than you, and then you experiment with them, and just like that.
Didn't you say there was somebody at the school that you did that with?
Yes, because when I started the classes of harmony, there was another kid that was 3 years older than me, and he played trombone. And he was very much tuned into Dixieland jazz. And so he had already he had found already some kind of scores, lead sheets. And so we kind of figured out the chord symbols practically by ear. and that's how we started. We did together a first 5-piece band. We never played anywhere with that band, but that's how we started to try to play tunes like the Sheik of Araby and
Yeah.
things like that. Then after that, I started to go to Milan and go hear musicians that were already playing professionally and trying to learn from them. And I met many of them. And you see, we are talking now about the very early 90s, the end of the 80s, the early 90s, that there was still such a demand for live music in every situation, you know, the inauguration of a new company, a Christmas party, even a funeral, or every kind. They wanted live music, and what we played was jazz, you know, the famous tunes of Gershwin and Carmichael and and Cole Porter and that kind of stuff. And you see, because there was such a demand for live music, as soon as a new musician would appear and knowing few tunes with more or less the right chords, would be automatically sucked in network of gigs.
Right.
Because there were not enough piano players.
Right.
And that's how I started. And I learned most of what I play, I learned it on the gigs, on the stage. You know, and very often the bass player knew all the repertoire, you know, perfectly. And so sometimes you wouldn't know a song. And so they would tell you, okay, we'll play the first few choruses and then you catch it again. And all things like that, you know. Or the band leader just before starting playing would sketch out some chord change of a few tunes if you didn't know them.
Right.
You know, but I made it a point to try to learn by heart as much music as I could.
Yeah. Well, like Dan says, learn as many songs as you can, because, you know, the jazz, if you will, the improvisation part is all going to be here for you or in your heart. But if you know as many tunes as you can, if you know as many songs,
that's right.
That'll do you good. So you've obviously learned quite a few.
Well, you know, it's never enough. I can tell you that.
I know. It's no matter how many you know, there's still more to learn.
That's right.
You played Mandy Make Up Your Mind the other day, and I was trying to think, when's the last time I heard that tune? And I couldn't even remember the last time I heard it. It had been so long.